And I had the honor the other day of giving a speech to a group of hospital executives, and someone asked me about trauma care and what was happening in Orlando. And I said, just imagine the multiplier effect of what the trauma that those family members, those victims who are still alive, are going to suffer for years to come if we don't treat their emotional and psychological wounds from that trauma with the same urgency that we are now giving them blood transfusions and repairing them and doing the kind of surgeries that are necessary for them to walk out of that hospital. This is a moment in time. I've communicated with every bit of energy I have to the President of the United States, who's going to be addressing the people of this country tomorrow, that this is another example where our country cannot miss the invisible wounds that happen because of these traumatic events. We have let our wounded warriors from Iraq and Afghanistan come home and suffer in silence and die at record rates because we failed to acknowledge that trauma is a real wound of war and that it needs to be treated as such and it cannot be ignored. And we have another trauma going on with this terrible tragedy. And it would be a shame if all we did was talk about the moments leading up to the tragedy and what the perpetrator was thinking, as opposed to thinking about all the family members and their children and what they're going to go through growing up without a family member because of that terrible tragedy. I was giving this talk the other day and just broke down in tears in the middle of it. Because it really occurred to me that in my family we never talked about the trauma of both of my uncles getting violently murdered in public view and having that trauma reoccur on video over and over and over again in our lives. And here I was talking about yesterday, I talked to this Washington Post reporter today, and she said, "You mean you never talked about it?" I said, "Not once. Not once." And, you know, my father suffered in silence his whole life. And my mother suffered, and the consequences of that on not only my family, you know, my Robert Kennedy family, my John Kennedy family, all of my other cousins were affected. It was like a nuclear explosion just casting radiation throughout everybody that was nearby. We were all affected by it. And the powerful way we are affected is that we never talked about it. And it's ironic today that even though my family is one of the most well-known families in the nation, and everything that my family's gone through is public record. Okay, it's been reported on in a million different venues and in books. That when I wrote my book, it was viewed as telling a secret, telling tales out of school, when in fact there really aren't any more tales to tell out of school because of so much reporting over the years. And yet that's the way I felt growing up, that you couldn't talk about these things because you had to protect the image. You had to protect the sense that, you know, this was a sense of propriety.